Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be my full review of this knife, and this is the Jack Wolf Knives Midnight Jack for 2024. So this is the second release of this pattern, the Midnight Jack, which is a coffin-handled Barlow knife. And if you're interested in the pattern itself, the history of the pattern, I would highly recommend checking out my video on the first release of this knife, which you'll be able to find at this link. And I talk more about the history of the Barlow and the fact that a coffin-handled Barlow is a relatively rare type of Barlow, but it's one that I really think is cool. I loved the original Midnight Jack and have carried and used mine quite a bit. And so I was really excited to see this second iteration of the Midnight Jack coming out. So this video is going to focus mostly on the differences between the original and this knife. Now, first of all, one difference that I noticed in the unboxing is in the tube and the art. So this is a little bit of a unique art style, kind of different from the other Jack Wolf Knives' art so far, and I noticed that it did say that it was a different artist. So all of the knives up to, not actually this knife, I didn't realize on the previous model that Jack Wolf Knives released, which was the second version or second iteration of the sharpshooter. So here's that. It actually was the first to have art by this new artist, J. Gonzo Art, and everything previous to that had art from Sean Tiffany. And all of the art has been great. Sean Tiffany has kind of a very comic book style. I believe he is a comic book artist. And this J. Gonzo Art, I'm not familiar with the artist. And I actually didn't notice because this particular art for the second version of the sharpshooter is not that different. I do see the differences more now that I'm aware that it's a different artist, but it's not that different from, you know, the art that Sean Tiffany did. But this is, you know, very noticeably different. It's got a very cool kind of solid colors, blocky colors styling to it that I do really enjoy. I like the kind of gentlemanly look that Jack Wolf has there. So that's interesting, and it is just kind of different on how this information is presented. So as compared to the After Hours Jack, which is the last one that was Sean Tiffany, as you can see there, kind of has more of the written out, you know, ways of finding all of the information like the website and stuff. This is a little smaller, and you know, I do like this. I also like, do not unscrew the knife. A lot of modern knife enthusiasts are getting into pocket knives, slip joints. Bill Howard told me that he doesn't use the term slip joint, but I think when I'm referring to a modern slip joint, I'm going to continue to use slip joint, and I'll say pocket knife when I'm talking about traditional ones. But anyway, Jack Wolf Knives are bringing a lot of modern knife enthusiasts into slip joints, and you don't want to unscrew this unless you absolutely have to, and I don't know why you would have to, because they're just a lot more difficult to get put back together than a modern knife. But let's move on to the differences in the knife itself. So first of all, there are some different handle materials on this run. They have used this Arctic Storm fat carbon. Let me make 100% sure. I always forget between fat carbon and camo carbon, and yeah, it's fat carbon white storm. There's several different types of carbon fiber that Jack Wolf Knives use, but this is the Arctic Storm fat carbon, and they have used it before, but they're doing some new things. In particular, there's a chaotic resin, which seems to be, you know, the hot seller. That's going to be the hot seller. These are releasing today. Plan to have this video go live just before the actual release of these knives. But the chaotic resin is a new handle material for Jack Wolf Knives. Looks super cool, pink, blue, black, and white together. And I'm really considering getting one of those just because it's so unique and cool looking. But then a difference here with the blade is that this is actually stonewashed. So you can see it has a different finish than Jack Wolf knives have so far. So kind of the first and the most common finish was this machine satin. So this is done, it's ground, the finishing grind is done by hand, but it's a belt satin, I guess you could say. So you can see that, you can see those vertical lines. Then another blade finish that Jack Wolf Knives has used is a hand satin. So this is the second version of the laid back jack, and you can see that it has those horizontal lines and a very different look. And I do like that. A lot of people like the hand satin. I actually really like the machine satin too. I guess generally I probably prefer the belt satin. I keep saying machine, but I mean belt satin over the hand satin, although the hand satin is cool too. And then they've also done ones with a coated blade. And there is a coated blade version for this second release of the Midnight Jack. So it's a new blade finish for Jack Wolf Knives. I checked with Ben on that, and he said it is new. So that's really cool, and I'm glad I got to check it out. And I think that it looks nice. One of the things that people love about Jack Wolf Knives is just how finely they are finished and fitted. And one of those things is that these edges, these corners of the spines are real crisp, and almost to the point on some of them that it's maybe could be a little bit less crisp. Not really on this one, but sometimes they are almost kind of sharp actually. And so with this finish, that is not the case. They are nice and rounded. They have a very buttery, smooth feel, all of the different kind of transitions on the blade. I think that it looks good. It fits in with the finish of the titanium of the bolster. I like it a lot. I think some people still kind of see a stonewash as, I don't know, a less high-end finish on a knife. So some people might not like it for that. But for me, I do really like it. Haven't had any issues with, rusting or anything because of the stonewash. And it should, kind of cover up any scratches that you get a little bit better than any of those other finishes. So I do like this stonewash. I really like the feel of it. And even though it doesn't have quite as sharp edges, on the spine and such, it doesn't make it more difficult to open the knife. It is very pinchable, even with the strong pull, which I'll talk about here in a bit. So I do like both the look and especially the feel, just how it feels. It's a little different. You don't have those lines. You can feel the vertical lines, on the satin knives, even on GEC ground knives. You can often feel the vertical lines, but you can't on this. And I do like that. It does feel good. The long pull is still really crisp and well done, and you can see that the etching is nice also. Speaking of which, this continues to be S90V, which is different from the original version of the Midnight Jack when Jack Wolf Knives was using M390. So that's another difference, and I have been preferring the S90V. I think it's a great steel. I wasn't super familiar with it until I started using it in Jack Wolf Knives, but I found that it's not that difficult to sharpen. I use diamond stones and holds an edge really nicely. Another difference, as these have been having, is the larger sharpening choil. And I can kind of take or leave sharpening choils, but if you're going to have one, you might as well make it big so you get lots of use out of it, lots of sharpening, and I think it gives it kind of an interesting, striking look. Now, one thing that's not different is the 3 lines. Ben has been adding those 3 lines to these new versions. So you can see here on the second version of the sharpshooter, you've got the 3 lines on the bolster as compared to the first version, and the same is true for the laid back jack. The laid back jack. The Midnight Jack already had those 3 lines. So, it's not a difference, but I like that they kept it. Moving on to the handle, and this is a really, really nice change. I was really happy to see that Ben, implemented this. Is if you look at the original Midnight Jack, these are some sharp corners. And so when I, before I was really into Jack Wolf knives, had gotten several of them and carry them probably more frequently than any other brand of slip joint at this point, to be completely honest, or at least in line with, I didn't use a slip. And so when I, was first checking out this original version, these corners can be a little uncomfortable if you carry your pocket knife in your back pocket. Now I actually use a slip most times for my slip joint knives, and I also carry in my front pocket more often than my back pocket now. So it's less of an issue. But if you carry without the slip, which again, it does come with an included slip, then these sharp corners here, especially along the actual edge, but this is another area that was changed, where, you could feel them. Again, not a huge deal with the slip, but definitely something that I noticed when I carried it without the slip. So on this new version, they are nicely beveled. So you can see that bevel there. I'll show you a comparison. Very different. And that makes a world of difference in the pocket. I carried this without a slip some just because of that, to see how it felt. And it makes a noticeable difference in carrying. So if you carry without a slip, this will be more comfortable than the previous version. And then these lines here, 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 and here are also, if it will focus, also rounded as compared to, a little bit more of a hard corner on the original version. So I think that that's a great change. Really kind of makes it easier to carry and use this knife, in particular if you are not using a slip. Now, as for the general construction, if you're familiar with these Jack Wolf knives, it is always really good. And that's the case here also. No gaps, nice fitment between the bolsters and the covers. The centering is perfect. It sits nice and deep in the frame. No blade wrap. Now, another difference is that this knife has a stronger pull than the original. The original I would call probably closer to a 7, but between a 6 and a 7. Not like ultra strong. And this one I would call definitely an 8. I would say right in the 8 range. It's not like difficult to open, like I would say a 9, or like dangerous and unpleasant like a 10. It's certainly nowhere near like a GEC Whaler, but it's, maybe stronger than, a GEC 71. Actually, it's pretty close to the 71, to be completely honest. I'd say pretty close to a 71. This is a 2018 71, and it's real close to that. A little stronger than the 2023 GEC 21s, or other 24. So, yeah, it is a stronger pull. I would say around an 8. And I think a lot of people are going to really like that. People appreciate strong pulls, especially, I think, people who come from modern knives. It feels more secure. I actually really like the pull on this one. I think if I was going to choose, I would prefer this pull, but it's not like this one really like turns me away or anything like that. It's just a little stronger than this one, and I think this one's beautiful. But it's still really crisp, great action, feels great. And one other difference that I didn't notice until pretty recently is that it seems like there's a bit of an upturn of the angle from the spine, or I'm sorry, from the back of the handle here to the spine. The spine almost turns upward somewhat, whereas this one is a little bit more straight. Now, I didn't get a chance to ask Ben if that was intentional, and if I do, I will mention it in the description. If I get a chance to ask him and he says that it was purposeful or not, I'll let you know in the description. I'm not sure if it was something that is a purposeful design change, or if it's just like the fitment between, the blade and the spring, maybe from the stone wash or something, that can, be something that can change due to those kind of tolerances and such. But I'll see if I can show you what I mean here a little bit better. So I'm going to line up the handles as best I can and show you how the newer one sits, you know, a millimeter or two higher, especially towards the tip there. So the blade just sits a little bit higher. It is somewhat upward canted. It's something you see on some knives, like for example, the sheepfoot blade, or I'm sorry, this spear point blade on the Ohio River Jack is canted upwards. It's something that, you know, there's definitely a precedent for in traditional knives and pocket knives. I wouldn't say that I prefer it, but like I say, I didn't actually even notice it until I was looking really closely at the knife preparing for this video. So not sure if you would notice it if you hadn't seen this video, or if it's something that will be on all of the models or not. But I think that this is a great knife. I really like the changes that Ben made with adding the option of a stone wash, with you know, rounding this out, beveling it somewhat. Bigger choil, you know, definitely doesn't hurt, and just still a super well-made knife. I love Barlows. You probably know that if you watch my channel. You know, if you love Barlows, you can join the Barlow Bearcat Club. Speaking of which, I'm going to give you a size comparison to a GEC 15. This is the Barlow Bearcat Club 2024 GEC club knife, and I announced it on the Instagram, so I'm okay with showing it now. These are not available. They were only available to people who joined the club before the January meeting, so don't join just for this, but if you love Barlows, by all means join. But this is a size comparison between the Midnight Jack and a GEC 15, and then I'll show you a size comparison with a GEC 86, which is closer to the size of the Midnight Jack. So there's a GEC 86. You can see the 86 a little bigger, but right around the same size as the Midnight Jack. So the Midnight Jack is a really great size Barlow for using. I think it's a great size in general for a slip joint, for a pocket knife. And I have really enjoyed getting to check out this knife. As always, I want to say thank you to Ben for sending this along, to Donnie for everything he does for Jack Wolf Knives, and everyone there at Jack Wolf Knives. I think these are really, really cool knives. I hope you are able to pick one up if you want one. If you do, I'd love to hear how you like it, and I will have links in the description for the dealers. I suggest Knife Ship Free or traditional pocket knives, but there's lots of great dealers. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.